Welcome back to Drawn to Darkness, a bi-weekly podcast where we discuss our favorite horror and true crime. If your friends think you're weird because you find slasher films relaxing and can drift off into a dreamless sleep after a serial killer documentary, we're here for you. My name is Annie, and I'll be introducing Caroline to my favorite horror movies, podcasts, TV shows, books, and short stories.
And my name is Caroline, and I'll be doing the same for Annie on the true crime side of things.
I want to start today with a question. Caroline, do you have a ghost story or a hometown ghost story, something that people talked about in your town?
I mean, other than the classic New England, the reservoir used to be a town that they flooded. No, I do not. What about you?
I've got a few. Not really a hometown one that I can remember. I'd have to really think about that. But I have a few personal ones. I used to work at this bar called Judge Roy Bean in Bristol, Rhode Island, which is kind of a famous site of the American Revolution and stuff like that. We have the longest running parade in the country. The center line of the road is painted red, white, and blue. Very patriotic place. And this bar was in this really old colonial era building that, rumor has it used to be a brothel and a home for women who'd lost their husbands at sea. I don't know if any of that's actually true, but that's what we were told when we worked there. And, people who worked there, and I don't know if they were putting me on, would say there was like a hat man in the basement. And we always had to go down there to get supplies. And I was terrified every time I went into that basement. And one time I was having a drink after work with one of the other bartenders, and we could turn the intercom on to the third floor and we would hear whisper. Probably nothing, but it was a creepy, creepy place. And then my other maybe ghost story is at my brother's house. He used to live in one of those ranch houses that had multi-levels, so you could see up the staircase from the playroom to the level upstairs. It was like half a staircase. And they used to always hear things in that playroom. And I was sleeping in that playroom when I went to visit them. And one time when I was kind of drifting off to sleep, I saw out of the corner of my eye what looked like a little boy run past at the top of the stairs. And they have all sorts of ghost stories from that house, like just constant toys turning on when they shouldn't have. And my brother's mother-in-law would take care of their actual kids. And she used to say, like, quiet down now. And then it would stop. What do you think?
So this would be a good time to let our listeners know that I do not believe in ghosts.
Fair.
And you do.
I didn't say I believe. I'm open. I'm open to the possibility.
So can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
As an open to believing person, and this relates to your story as well as things we heard about in this series. Why might spirits be obsessed with opening and closing cabinets, turning toys on and off, and other tapping type of behaviors?
Have you seen the TV show Ghosts? It's an English series about a couple who move into like this, they inherit this like amazing old English manor, and it's haunted. Most of the ghosts they have like limited powers, but they're trying to communicate. They're trying to tap but they just can't manipulate our world, but they're trying. So that would be my theory on that.
So they're trying to like tell you something.
They're trying to get through to you in some way. And I think that process is seen in the movie Ghost as well. The Demi Moore, Patrick Swayze, right? Like how he's slowly able to kind of increase his powers to connect with her.
If only we had more Whoopi Goldbergs around,
If only that movie were a documentary and not total fiction. We could believe it.
Also true.
Well, today we're going to be talking about the podcast Ghosts in the Burbs. Don't forget, there will be spoilers. Today we're discussing the first 9 episodes, which is really the first 8 because episode 4 is missing. Or is it? Maybe it comes up later. So go off and listen, then come back. I'm going to give you a moment for you to pause if you need to do that. Okay, here we go. Ghosts in the Burbs is a podcast and blog created by Liz Sower, a fellow suburban New England mom who, like us, is drawn to darkness. In each episode, Liz interviews a neighbor to get a safe scare from their ghost story. As she explores the supernatural happenings in the affluent town of Wellesley, Massachusetts, she hears tales of ghosts, cryptids, demons, poltergeists, and more. And maybe, if you keep listening, it's all connected. So I'd basically describe this as Desperate Housewives meets The Exorcist and Poltergeist. It's like a campfire ghost story mixed with an interior design and fashion Pinterest board, plus a dose of very self-deprecating humor about modern motherhood and kind of being a hot mess. So, Caroline, what adjective would you use to describe this?
In true non-believer form, I would say suspect, I guess, would be my main adjective.
So you don't believe anything she's saying?
No, it's not that I don't believe anything she's saying. And in particular, when she's talking about some of these moms who she is very explicitly judging
Yes.
about their gravitas that she is feeling off of them, whether they're presenting it or not. I wonder if they're messing with her. Sometimes I just wonder
Mm.
if they're having a go.
So that people are making up their ghost stories and she's falling for it, maybe?
Yeah.
Personally, I would describe this as cozy, comforting, and at times very relatable. The first time I listened to it, I was training for the Blessing of the Fleet run in Narragansett, and I just have really fond memories of running down these long, rural New England roads that were just trees on either side with no cars going by me and being just like a little bit scared, but also really enjoying that solitude and the feel of those stories. For me, it's like curling up in front of a fire with a hot chocolate after being out in the snow. I've listened to the full 70-something episodes twice, which is quite common for fans. I'm on the Ghosts in the Burbs fan page, and a lot of people have listened like 3, 4, 5 times. I'm actually considering a third go now that I've re-listened to those first 8 episodes because I just really love it. And the only thing that's stopping me is that there's so many other things to listen to, and I only have limited podcast time, and I've got about 1 million podcasts I'd like to listen to.
The most relatable thing I feel is listening to you talk about wanting to listen to a podcast for the third time and being like, but there are so many other podcasts out there.
I know you've mentioned listening to, what was it, that true crime obsessed one multiple times?
Yeah, yes. In particular, I've actually listened to and watched everything about the Jinx case many, many times, from the series itself to the official podcast about it to the True Crime Obsessed coverage of the podcast about it. I really love that case in particular. So
The Jinx is somewhat local to you, is that right?
it's actually nearby where I live now. Robert Durst briefly lived in my area and would be seen walking around town, and certainly his wife, Kathy, who went missing. Actually, the train I would use to go to New York City is the train station she supposedly disappeared from, which she never went to, in my opinion. And I do drive by the street where their house is that I believe he killed her in. So, yeah.
I've seen that documentary once. I thought it was awesome. What another weirdo, Robert Durst. Like Mark Goodyear, similar vibes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
If you're wondering what we're talking about, go back to our previous episode on the Fox Hollow murders. Well, let's talk about Liz, the narrator. You point out that she's judgy, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
So Liz is as I said, self-deprecating stay-at-home mom who wants a safe scare. I agree that she's judgy, but I also find her relatable. The idea that she refers to needing a unisom to sleep. I'm not a great sleeper. That she admits that she yells at her kids and leaves the house looking like shit. She was a librarian. I've always wanted to be a librarian. She's a writer, aspiring, struggling, whatever you want to call it when you can't get published. So am I. She preps for the zombie apocalypse. I used to have a zombie cupboard in my house. And I feel like we've also had this somewhat similar journey in that we both had small kids in the, 20 teens when she started this. And just in general, we have similar taste in horror. I find I love her book, podcast, TV show recommendations.
She mentions Jaws.
She talks about Jaws, yes. That was one of my favorite moments when she refers to herself as Chief Brody, yelling at everyone to get out of the water.
Yeah, I gotta say, sometimes you hate something because it highlights what you hate about yourself. And I think you could agree that I'm a pretty judgy person. So sometimes when I'm listening to her, I'm like, God, relax. Because she's not negatively judging people. Usually it's with envy. She's talking about impossibly perfect buns and fashion, which I can relate to because I think we both had the experience of growing up in wealthy areas, not being as wealthy as all the people around us. And so I can relate to that, but I felt it was a little like exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's just because it was drawing out something about myself that I would rather not recognize.
I mostly enjoy the judgy asides. I kind of get a kick out of them. But
Hmm.
I think the setting contributes to that overwhelming feeling of wealth, like she's surrounded by wealth, which is very New England. And as you said, I grew up feeling poor in a wealthy New England town. So I get that feeling of not measuring up. Like we only lived there because my parents worked at this boarding school and we lived in shabby campus housing and ate the crappy food at the dining hall that was provided to us for free. So I felt a lot of envy for the people in my life who did live in the type of homes that Liz describes. And we were fine, right? Like we had everything we needed. But I grew up feeling poor that my parents didn't buy me a fancy car or take me skiing. So I get Liz's envy of those Wellesley power moms and queen bees. And I get it now as a grown up. Like I still kind of feel that a lot of people around me are wealthier than me. And there are those parents who look good at school pickup and drop off. And that's definitely not me. And I don't have the time or energy or inclination to volunteer for all the things and also keep my house tidy.
Yeah, totally. I too live in an area where I'm not at the top of the people we are around all the time. But yeah, it doesn't impact my engagement with people as much as it did in my youth, I'll say, for sure.
Probably maturity comes into that, where you're like, you know what? It doesn't matter that I don't have that.
I remember standing around in a park in our town when I was full-time working mom and never volunteered for anything, never involved with anything, talking to all these PTA moms. And we had this great conversation that was very mutual about like everyone recognizing the value each other brings and everyone being equally as important for our children to see us being as moms, like see us being the involved mom, the working mom who wants to be working, that it all sort of plays a role in showing our girls they can be whatever they choose to be. And that's really what feminism is, right? So I think actually ripping off that Band-Aid of engaging with the people who I would have envied otherwise also helped a lot.
Yeah. I mean, thank God for the PTA moms because
Hell yeah.
somebody's got to do it, right? The schools are still in this kind of backwards 1950s system where they're assuming that there are people around to volunteer. And the reality is, a lot of us can't. We're overstretched. And I'm glad that somebody steps up and does it because it's not going to be me. I'm a teacher and teaching really bleeds into your life. So even the hours I'm not teaching, I'm marking, I'm prepping classes. It's a lot and I'm exhausted. And I also want to have time for things like this. So I do tend to prioritize myself over volunteering for the school. I mean, I volunteer for stuff. Like I always say I can show up at an event, but I can't plan it.
Yeah. And, I was very career oriented immensely. And I've taken a step back from working and now I'm being more involved in the school. And I think also seeing both sides. I mean, I'm never going to be the presentable, perfect bun mom that I have curly hair. It's just not happening.
Well, back to Liz and the humor aspect of it. We've already mentioned the Chief Brody from Jaws comment. I love that. I like the way she finds humor in parenthood, like when she talks about wanting to leave her daughter behind because she's licked the car. My daughter licked a drain once, and I remember my son sucked water out of a stagnant puddle. So I'm like, yeah, I get that.
I turned around in the grocery store and one of my kids was licking the inside of a freezer door, like where your milk and stuff is both. So yeah.
I think my favorite funny moment is when she's in that pregnancy ravenous mode and she's sitting across from like this really thin put together woman who's eating a salad while she's gorging on a burger, and then this woman leaves her salad half finished and Liz has to like stop herself from asking to finish it. As someone who ordered a Domino's pizza from the doctor's office parking lot after my doctor told me I'd been gaining too much weight, I found that very relatable.
Well, and on my side, as a person who has never been able to participate in any sort of diet program, because I just cannot, like, if I am hungry for a burger or a piece of toast, that is what I'm going to eat. And I don't care. I am a person who gets hangry and I want to eat what I want to eat. So I definitely related to that.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that she had a glass of wine while pregnant. I was a person who was very careful about it with my first pregnancy. With my second pregnancy, I had maybe a glass a month. With my third, maybe a little more than that. I mean, certainly it wasn't getting like blackout drunk or anything like that. But I did read a lot of articles shared to me by other pregnant moms, etc., talking about the patriarchy and paranoia that are involved in this. You must not even, consume any sort of deli meat or whatever. I am not a doctor. Nobody take medical advice from me. But I did appreciate that she was unafraid or seemingly unafraid to share that she enjoyed a glass while pregnant without fearing judgment.
Relatable, definitely. My favorite glass of wine while pregnant story was I had a friend who was an obstetrician at the hospital where I was going to be delivering my daughter. And I went to a party at her house when I was like 8 months pregnant. And literally all her friends were her fellow obstetricians. And I was like, I'm just going to have one and I don't care what any of you say. And everyone was really supportive.
My OB for my first child was like, don't even smell it, And then the second OB told me that she had a beer every day while she was pregnant. So she was just like, you don't need to kind of go crazy about the damage you're going to do.
Thanks, Liz, for letting us know it's okay.
Yeah.
In terms of other people feeling the same way I do, I think I mentioned there's a Ghost in the Bourbonites Facebook page, and there's 4,500 members, which kind of speaks to Liz's reach. I asked them, what do they love about this podcast? And this is a quote from a fan. She says, it feels like you're having coffee or tea with a friend who's sharing ghostly gossip. People talk about loving the characters, both ones that are one-offs and reoccur, like Nick Sayer will keep coming back, Vanessa, Hillary, and Jill, Claire. We haven't met Biddy yet, but she's a great character. There's just this great world building that will continue if you do keep listening and start to suspect, perhaps there's more going on in Wellesley than a few unrelated ghost stories. A lot of these women, and I think it's almost all women, talk about being pregnant or postpartum or injured or recovering from some loss, trauma, grief, and then for whatever reason happening across this and finding comfort in it. Let's talk about some of the non-ghostly aspects, like her descriptions of New England interior design.
Being a person who's not as artistically oriented as you, for sure, I didn't notice that as much as I noticed a lot of fashion commentary and car commentary, because I remember being like, I wish I knew enough about fashion to be able to say, I don't know, anything but Lululemon. Like, honestly, I don't know any brands, but I do absolutely relate to the whole, like, big suburban white boat of a car that all of the very perfect seeming wealthy moms in my area drive.
Yeah, I agree. The fashion stuff I don't relate to. I've never coveted designer. Like she mentions like a Chloe bag, or I can't even remember which designer, but some designer sunglasses. And I'm like, whatever. But I do tend to salivate over interior design magazines and all the things I can't afford to do. I mean, again, I used to babysit in houses like this. So, the Adirondack chairs, the great rooms, the big windows, and how creeped out I would feel when, it got dark and you're only seeing your reflection as you waited for the parents to come home. I can picture that so perfectly, even if I didn't live in it.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I lived in a town where you didn't need curtains. Your neighbors were not anywhere near you. So I absolutely relate to that whole aspect of once it's dark. Actually, when I lived in New York City, then coming home to sleep and you just hear like a deer crack a branch and you're like, what was that? Because there's no other sounds, and so all of those one-off sounds then suddenly freak you out. Like there's something to be scared of as opposed to the constant buzz of living in a downtown area. I still live in the suburbs, but I live in the middle of the town. So I even remember in COVID going outside and being like, where's that hum? Like, there's no cars going by. I'm so used to a constant busyness.
I have a neighbor who drives a Harley and used to take it at 5:30 in the morning to work, so I had to get used to quite a few sounds here. Well, let's talk about the stories. So there's the woman with the new baby in the perfect house whose husband sees something in the basement but won't say what it is. There's Nick Sayer and the Ouija board. There's the dump swap and the sailor's valentine. There's the home invasion. There's the Zilla woman. And then there's the coven of queen bees, Hillary, Vanessa, and Jill. Which was your favorite?
I think the Coven of Queen Bees was my favorite. Keeping in mind, I don't believe any of these stories to be real, personally. I love the Mean Girls aspect, I guess, of those friends and their picture perfect. They all married their high school sweethearts, all of that. I was immediately suspicious about like, okay, I'm going to Google this girl falling off a boat. And then it was quick oh, well, we have a reason why. When you Google that, you won't find anything. A lot of it was just like, I thought of something and then there was a cover up quickly. And I was just like, okay, what about the boyfriend then? Could I not look up him killing himself on that same lake and someone not mentioning that his girlfriend died there? I loved it because it seemed scripted more so, I guess, than the other ones.
Okay. So you're saying that these women are unreliable narrators.
Yeah. Yes.
You're right. You'll find out more later if you keep listening.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love the opening of this story because there is more to it. I like that aspect of be careful what you wish for, which links to a lot of classic short stories like The Monkey's Paw and Button Button by Richard Matheson. And we go back even further to like The Midas Touch. They got what they wanted, but did they? They got what they thought they wanted. And then there's these awful repercussions. They all seem pretty miserable, beneath the veneer of perfection and wealth. I wonder if Liz was inspired by something that actually happened in my town. Because in 2009, so I think Liz started this podcast in 2016, there were some teenagers out on a boat and they were drinking and one fell off and either got hit in the head or run over or drowned. So that happened in my town and we're like an hour outside Wellesley. I should ask her someday. She's on the Ghosts and the Burbs Facebook page, so.
It was also very reminiscent of the Murdoch family in the U.S. There is a story of a very wealthy family in one of the Carolinas who the son was involved in a drunken boat crash where a girlfriend of a boy dies. And it's kind of the first in a series of suspicious murders that occur in this family.
Are these the same Murdochs as in like Rupert Murdoch?
No, it's spelled differently as well, but no. And they're American. They're not. Isn't he Australian?
The Murdochs are
Yeah.
Australian. Those Murdochs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of wealthy Murdochs causing problems. Hey.
Yeah. A lot of wealthy people causing problems.
Yes. Can we talk about the Ouija board a little bit? Nick Sayer and his Ouija board night?
Yeah, so I know we talked about this previously. I had a Ouija board. I had sleepovers where we used the Ouija board. I have been a part of the Ouija board moving, and I have been a mover of it. I have also been a person who knew someone else was moving, Also, wait, sorry to take a tangent here, but wasn't it like inappropriate Pictionary or something that
Dirty
she's so
Pictionary.
fixated on? Well, how is that not clear what that is?
I know, right? I can imagine.
It continues 2 episodes later. She's like, and I still don't know what that is. I'm like, you don't.
I know what Dirty Pictionary is.
Yes. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, I find it very silly, the whole thought that this thing that is mass produced by a corporation can conjure spirits somehow in a way that nothing else could.
Well, I've been thinking about why would I never do it? Why have I never done it? Why does it scare me? Even though everything you're saying is much more rational than what I'm thinking. So do you remember when in the 80s and 90s, they used to scare us about drugs, right? Like you do LSD one time and it's going to break your brain forever, right?
Also sex. Did you watch the movie Kids? I was terrified of getting AIDS the first time I had sex.
Yes, that you could make one mistake and it would ruin your life forever. That was a big way of scaring us in that era. So
for sure.
And I know this doesn't make sense.
The pre-internet era. Sorry.
Yes, the pre-internet era. I feel like it's the same thing with a Ouija board. If you play around with it, you'll probably be fine. But if you do it at the wrong time, with the wrong thing lurking when you're kind of opening up that door or thinning the veil, it could haunt you for life. And again, I know that's silly. Do I actually believe in this stuff? I'd like to say no, but at the same time, would I ever mess around with a Ouija board? No, I wouldn't. No one could ever make me mess around with a Ouija board. I would never do it.
Listen, as the logical skeptic here, I will say that's fair. That's fair. I was very freaked out by that one thing could ruin your whole life narrative. So I get it. I get it.
Why take a chance? What if it is real? What about the dump swap and the sailor's valentine? What did you think of that one?
Well, okay, so the dump swap thing, I just didn't understand. She was like, take this painting, and you're just like, why don't you just leave it somewhere? I don't know. Why do you need this other person to take care of this? Just take it to an actual dump.
So I guess that is a question. What do you do with a haunted object? What do you do with a haunted house? And this is explored throughout the podcast. Like if you have a haunted house and you know it's haunted and you sell it to somebody, how complicit are you? If you give somebody a haunted object that you know is cursed, and it's caused your family trouble. And I think the first story
Yeah,
touches on that.
the haunted house one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, having taken business law, depending on what state you're in, you cannot do that legally. If you know that there's an issue with that house, I don't think you can say it's haunted, but if you can say you've experienced issues and you haven't disclosed it.
There's irregularities. But what if these
Yeah.
irregularities are not recognized by the law? I mean, you're saying, I don't believe in this stuff.
Right.
But you do see that people on like Facebook Marketplace will sell haunted dolls and they're like, this is haunted. And people will take them. So
Yeah, there are a bunch of Rob Graveses out there.
there are crazy people out there, yeah.
Back to the Fox Hollow, but also back to It Follows. Even as a non-believer of this stuff, when I heard that person be like, I saw that other family go into this house, or I knew of this other family, I just was like, ick, I guess, was my feeling. Like, if you really genuinely believe there's a problem here, how you can pass that problem on to another person, I don't really understand.
Yeah, you would definitely be complicit. But at the same time, not selling a house you can't live in would ruin most people financially, right?
For sure. But, like, not getting rid of a painting wouldn't ruin, just.
Well, there's the same issue with the bunk beds, right? The bunk bed story,
Mhm.
that he doesn't know what to do with the bunk bed and he realizes his family has actually held on to these haunted bunk beds the whole time. For me, that was the scariest.
Okay, and for me, that made me the most aggravated because at the end of that, she says she's calling the police. And I was like, did this woman really call the police on this guy? As a person who doesn't believe this stuff could be real, did she really like see something in his back pocket and call the freaking cops? Like, in my eyes, as a person who doesn't believe, understanding that I couldn't possibly understand her point of view, I will say, I was immediately like, oh my gosh, that's so dangerous to try to call the police on somebody.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sure we're going to talk about the privilege of these people in this town and calling the police on certain people versus other people can be a very dangerous thing to do.
That's a good point.
I
mean, this guy's probably like a 50-something-year-old businessman, so he'll be fine.
Yes, he'll be fine.
That was my favorite story, though. I really liked the imagery of the brother just walking around with this paint scraper like Damien or something from The Omen. And the way he says, he needs something. And then I know what he needs. And he tries to kill his brother. I thought that was really creepy. And just the way you could take this innocuous object, this red-handled paint scraper, and imbue it with such horror. I like that.
And I also appreciate, there tends to be these kind of wealthy, not working wives telling these stories, but then to hear this man who's a professional and an older man and not the person you'd classically hear tell a ghost story.
Well, that's interesting. There is a societal higher value placed on men's opinions, which is not right. I remember once, it was at my daughter's school, and they were having a Mother's Day event during the work day. And then they had the Father's Day event on like a Friday night or something, because God forbid the men have to take off work, right? Like, of course the women can.
Right.
And I started to, type out this email about how that was sexist and unfair. And then my husband was like, do you want me to write it? Like, I agree. And I was like, yeah, that's great. It'll be better if it comes from you. And I was like, shit, that's not right. Like,
Right.
It should be just as valid coming from me. But it will be more valid if a man points out the sexism. And that sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. And I want to make it clear. No way do I think his story is more true than anyone else's story. I just thought it was interesting to hear from a different demographic. I had a very clear picture in my mind of, these people have a lot of free time either messing with this woman, and to hear someone who is busy all day and is not the same as everyone else was an interesting shift for me to be like, well, what about that? Maybe you should not be such a skeptic.
On the podcast Scared to Death, they have listener stories. And often, whenever a story comes in from somebody who's a soldier or a police officer or a doctor, they tend to be like, oh, it must be true, right? Because we do think that these people are more rational and cynical and are less likely to get carried away and fall for this kind of stuff if it's not real. So whether we should be valuing or believing their stories more than others is probably not right, but at the same time, it's natural to do that.
For sure.
So episode 5 is the home invasion one, the neighbor who is a high school student because she had this experience being called Carrie. And I just want to flag that because over the next few episodes, I'm going to recommend the novel Carrie, and it might take us a little bit more time to read that since it's an actual full book. So I just wanted to put that out there that at some point I want to read that. I think this is the darkest story, that horrible moment of being asked to choose the way you die. I thought that was the scariest.
I agree. I was listening to that while driving, and it really was very jarring to hear this horrific story of what happened to that person. Again, did not put as much stock in this spirit that overtook the guy, but I was very, very moved by the story of the horrific thing that happened to them and their family.
And the trauma that follows, that doesn't go away. And she asks Liz, have you ever really been scared? Because Liz speaks out the safe scare, the fun scare, the chills. But like if you've actually been scared because you're in real danger, it's not fun anymore. And I think that's really important to point out because otherwise, are we, by being drawn to darkness, exploiting people's horror? So we need to be aware of that.
I didn't actually love that question of have you ever really been scared? Because I am sure that every person has had some sort of near-death experience or scary thing happen. I mean, I always hear about my brother almost drowning or my husband almost getting in car accidents. And I recently was stuck in an elevator. It was scary. But we've all had traumatic things. I think I've mentioned before, like a lot of why I consume this category of entertainment, I guess, is to quell that anxiety that's like constantly in me, to feel like I'm doing research to protect myself and others from how to prevent these things from happening. Like, oh, now I've listened to My Favorite Murder, so I know to lock my fucking door or whatever, which I never would have done before.
And don't trust the security guard who knocks on your door.
Right. And fuck politeness, and I remember actually saying to my mom who had cancer and had a male doctor who was not taking her seriously, and being like, fuck politeness is what my podcast told me. And you need to get yourself a doctor who takes you seriously. And she might have lived longer because of that.
Yeah.
Who knows? And kudos to that storyteller for being so brave and wanting to go first and all that. I think that was pretty, significant.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out about that story is the Catholic mom, Nancy. I have a Catholic mom, Nancy. She's actually, if you've noticed our cover art, that is my mom, and she painted that. She's very Catholic, and the way this mom says, oh, you'll come back to us, that sounds a lot like something my mom has said to me about being Catholic and not being particularly interested in going to church. So that just felt cozy to me, even though I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. I know what it's like to have a mom who feels that way.
Yeah, and I will say that the Catholicism angle plays into my skepticism. I think Ricky Gervais actually has the best description of why I'm an atheist. Like, you just happen to be born in this place where they believe this thing, and so you're genuinely sure that that is true, and the burden of proof hasn't been met. And that element of, in the name of Jesus Christ, I demand you get out of my son with this paint scraper. I was sort of like, how lucky you are that this spirit believed in Jesus Christ. It does make me quite skeptical about some aspects of these stories. How could they possibly be true? There's a billion and one things you could believe.
I'm going to spoil something here. So if you have a problem with that, skip ahead. Okay, spoiler. These stories aren't real. They're all fictional.
Are they real? Because I tried to look this up, and everywhere she says they're real. Everywhere, like, that I was looking up. Okay,
so that's
I knew it.
Why you can't Google these stories. They're fake. She never admits to it online, but, like, they're fake.
No, she never does.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there is no way that there's this many people in this one town. Because I grew up in New England. I lived in a house that was a brothel. And I've never encountered anyone who had a single ghost story. So I was like, this seems crazy that all of these people would come into her with these stories. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I feel like you feel silly that you thought it was real, but I really want to reassure you that on the Ghosts in the Burbs Facebook page, like seriously, every couple weeks, somebody's coming on there and being like, wait, is this not real? So you are not the only one. And me too. When I first started listening, it took me quite a few episodes to have that moment in my head where I was like, this doesn't feel real to me.
Yeah, I did feel silly when you told me.
Well, as I was starting to figure out that you thought it was real, I felt like Christoph, after watching Olaf sing In Summer, like somebody's got to tell him. I got to tell her,
Oh my God, such a good analogy.
All right. You've mentioned that you found Liz a bit judgy, right? Do you have any other criticism?
I think it would have been better if she had the storytellers sound more different than the way she speaks. I think they sounded very similar to her in their phraseology.
Okay.
And how they structure sentences.
How they sentence?
The other, yeah, how they sentenced themselves.
In general, I think, and we've touched on this, the lack of awareness of privilege. I think because she's surrounded by so much wealth, she can be a bit out of touch. Anyone can be, right? Everybody's got different levels of income and ease and difficulty. And when you're wrapped up in your own stuff, it can be hard to remember that it's more difficult for someone else. For example, there's one point where Liz kind of disparages her J. Crew scarf because it's not like a proper designer. And I'm like, I was never able to justify spending money on something as expensive as a J. Crew scarf. To this day, I'd love to be able to afford to shop at J. Crew. So like J. Crew's a step down for her, but that was always aspirational for me. But again, I'm sure there are people who look at the way I spend my money and would think you're so privileged too, and you're not aware of it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I did feel like, as a person who, like I mentioned earlier in this episode, I've taken a step back from working. It's only because I had parents who passed, and I will have to go right back to working very, very soon. In fact, I'm really trying to get a job right now. And so a lot of her talking about these people and their wealth when she's in the same kind of situation, not needing to work, I definitely was like, well, I don't know how different you really are. I mean, maybe you're insecure fashion-wise, but I don't know.
Overall, though, I think she's a good person who makes mistakes. She changes. She listens to feedback. In later episodes, she refers to Halloween as our high holy season. And, people who are Jewish were like, that's actually kind of appropriating something that's important to us to talk about ghosts and Halloween. And she was like, yeah, okay, I'll stop. So, she acknowledges that. She changes her language. She does her best. Overall, I think she's imperfect, like, aren't we all? But doing her best and responding to feedback and making changes.
Yeah, I think that's great. And important to note, like, a big thing I was nervous about doing a podcast in the first place was how much I imagined that I would slip up and not recognize things and mistakenly insult people, etc. And so I really appreciate, I fully intend to always be like, whoops, I messed up and I'll do better. And I absolutely appreciate anytime anyone else does that.
Well, I hope if we ever get any listeners that they will treat our mistakes with grace and forgiveness. My only other criticism is Chardonnay. Gross.
Ew. Chardonnay, no way. That's my rhyme.
No way. We do have a friend who's like into wine, and she's like, no, there can be good Chardonnays. I don't know.
So I've heard. No one's ever proven it. Just like ghosts.
Okay.
I've heard it. Nobody's ever made me believe it.
So this mythical good Chardonnay may or may not be out there. I'll believe it when I see it. Hey.
Exactly.
All right. So real horror beneath the surface. I think, the trauma and real fear that the allure of darkness goes away. We talked about that earlier. So that brings up the necessity for respect for real victims who are actually impacted by the darkness in our world. That's not as big a problem with horror movies, but it's something to be aware with true crime.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly the story about the home invasion, that could be very triggering. I don't remember if she mentioned at the beginning of the episode, this story contains mention of.
I don't know if they were doing that in 2016. Were they? Trigger warnings? Was that a thing yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. We haven't done any either.
Do you think we should provide trigger warnings? I don't know. What do you think?
Part of me is like, if you're expecting something to be about crime and horror, that it should be sort of expected that some of these things are going to come up. But I certainly don't want to speak for people who've been through a trauma. I know that I expect to hear awful things when I listen to these subjects.
Me too. I mean, there's certain things that I do want to know. I guess a dog dies. I want to know if there's child sex abuse, and I want to know if there's torture or rape. Those are the things that I don't want to watch. I mean, maybe we should make a trigger warning for all the 90s references we're going to be subjecting our audience to. If you are under the age of 35, you may feel excluded.
For sure. Elder millennial, right? Yeah.
Geriatric millennials? Elder millennials? Yeah, take that, Generation Alpha, with your skibbity toilets and your
Sigma,
rules.
Ohio.
Don't worry. They don't listen to podcasts. They won't hear us making fun of them. Nope. Especially not geriatric millennial podcasts.
Sure.
Well, maybe we'll put trigger warnings in our show notes. Maybe we can learn. Okay.
Absolutely.
Be careful if you look into the darkness. It might look back. That's one of the underlying themes of Ghosts in the Burbs. As the co-host of a podcast called Drawn to Darkness, we are looking into the darkness. Is there really such a thing as a safe scare?
Yeah.
And then I think the other true horror is the malaise of, is it malaise or malaise?
Malaise.
Malaise.
Thank.
Malaise?
I know. Say like mayonnaise.
Like mayonnaise? The malaise of suburban motherhood. If we are looking for literary takes on that, you can go back and read Kate Chopin's The Awakening and Madame Bovary, and there's the petty marital resentments. And, you know, one of the characters talks about that feeling of devastation when, as a stay-at-home mom with a baby, her husband says he's going to be home late. And, you know, I haven't spent that much time as a stay-at-home mom. I went back at 3 months with my daughter and after a luxurious 6 with my son. But I do know that mix of exhaustion and boredom and joy. And I have had times where my husband's been like, I'm going to be late.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my longest was 4 months with my third.
I used to work at this toy shop, and there was a woman there who's super wealthy. And I know she was super wealthy because I babysat for her kids. They had this massive house overlooking the water near the yacht club, and it's the type of house Liz would admire. And she was doing this minimum wage job as a cashier at a toy shop with like kids in college. And I was like, why are you doing this? And she just said she needed an outlet. Like she needed conversation with adults, and lots of people from town would come in and she'd have a chance to chat with them. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm not working right now, but I'm doing a lot of volunteering, also to be engaging with adults about something that is not my family. The blessing of maternity leave was to only have one of those switches on in my mind, just the family switch and not both. Having to have both is exhausting, but also one of them is very, very, very rewarding, and the other one doesn't feel rewarding while it's happening. But I guess, well, you know, later it dies, but very rarely in real time do you feel like you're doing a good job as a parent.
The days are long, the years are short or something. There's some saying about that.
Supposedly.
Yes.
Yeah. So I hear.
Yeah. How scary was this for you?
Not. I mean, the home invasion one was scary, but otherwise, no, because, you know.
You don't believe it. Whether I believe it or not, I love those scary moments. There are a few down the track that if you keep listening, really get me. That safe shivers sort of way. It's not the type of horror that's going to keep you awake at night. And also, I think the fact that you're listening and not viewing, and the interview format kind of removes the listener from the immediacy of the story. So the teller is removed because they're narrating it from the past, and we're removed because we're hearing it through Liz. And then there's that further step of removal because we can't see what's happening. So it feels safe.
Right. Yes. Which I will say on the true crime side of things, I way prefer listening to true crime things or documentaries because I can't actually handle the reactions of people who've really experienced these things. I cannot handle having to witness the awfulness of things. So the removal is definitely, I think, a necessity. The one moment that actually did get me was the congratulations and then her finding out she's pregnant.
Nick Sayer.
Yeah, that I was sort of like, well, that's weird, but he could have said congratulations about anything. But it was a moment where I was like, oh, that was good storytelling for sure.
Some of these episodes sort of remind me of Pen Pal, which is what we reviewed in episode 1. It's nowhere nearly so disturbing. I mean, Liz's stuff is just kind of vaguely creepy and unsettling, but she often ends with that mic drop creepy moment. which is very reminiscent of creepypastas, like the idea that Jen from the home invasion poltergeist story still has the attachment, or the woman who's possessed by Zilla signs Zilla on her credit card receipt. And my favorite one, which is the man that she views in that fatherly way and has been holding her baby, actually has the paint scraper in his back pocket the whole time. So that was something I loved about this.
What do we learn about survival?
Um,
Don't play with a Ouija board.
yeah. Unlock your fucking door. I
Lock
think,
the door. Yeah.
because that was the only one where I was like, what a scary thing to experience.
Maybe don't summon ghosts like Hillary, Jill, and Vanessa. Being thin and marrying your high school boyfriend probably isn't worth it.
Yeah, although, I mean, I was very, very close with my grandfather. He died suddenly when I was 10. And I remember just constantly feeling like I would do anything just to talk to him again, just to hear his voice again. I can certainly relate to that feeling of, I want to see my friend again, you know? And I've also had friends who were my own age die, and I have seen them in dreams and interacted with them in dreams. And when I wake up, I'm always so sad because it was so lovely. So I can totally relate to the desire to reconnect to someone you've lost.
If Hillary, Jill, and Vanessa are telling the truth about why they reconnected with Claire.
If they even exist.
Don't let your teenager bury their feelings. You know, the home invasion, Jen, because there's real reasons for it, but they might trigger a poltergeist and telekinetic activity.
Speaking of those chicks, like I also was like, I hope my kid never wants to go on a boat with some drunk dude.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, as a high schooler, I have been in the car with drunk people and not been brave enough to be like, I'm uncomfortable with this. I want out. So I hope my children are smarter than I was.
1000%.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you if you would recommend this. Are you going to keep listening? Obviously, I love it. What about you?
If you have specific episodes, I might listen to them, like based on this conversation and what you heard me talk about that got me versus didn't get me. If there were other episodes you would recommend, I would totally listen to those. I don't know that I would choose it on my own because I'm more interested in the true side of things.
Okay. It's okay. I guess we can still be friends. As I said, I love it. I love the tropes. I love the idea that the little ghost girl isn't really a ghost girl. I love haunted objects, husbands who don't believe you, shadow figures tapping, slow possession, poltergeist, sleepwalking, deals with the devil. And that's only the first 8 episodes. If you keep listening, you'll come across cryptids, aliens, preppers, black-eyed children. It's so much fun.
What are black-eyed children?
You don't want to know.
Well, tell me about the prepper episodes because I'm interested in people who are obsessive.
Okay.
For sure.
Preppers is a great show. I am really drawn to it.
Yes, I think time will tell.
Yeah.
But it does seem more and more like they are right.
Yeah. Do you have a palate cleanser? I don't really need a palate cleanser. This is a palate cleanser for me.
I do have a palate cleanser. I have been listening to Amy Poehler's new podcast, and it is wonderful. I am not a person who enjoys celebrities talking like they're more important than other human beings that just are doing their jobs. I don't really get the obsession with that, but Amy Poehler is someone I've always really enjoyed in a very low-key way, and her podcast includes a lot of low-key, chill, but funny people that I appreciate. Today's episode I listened to was Paul Rudd, and they talked for a very long time about the movie Wet Hot American Summer, which is one of my most favorite movies of all time that I quote often that not a lot of people know I'm quoting. So highly recommend. It is a great listen.
I know when you quote Wet Hot American Summer. I love it.
I know you do.
I guess my nice thing of the week is that I recently showed my kids Back to the Future, and I was really hesitant to show them because of the scene where Biff is sexually assaulting Lorraine. And I remember as a kid that really upset me, and I didn't really understand what was going on. And I have a daughter who's highly empathetic. I mean, she practically burst a blood vessel crying when she found out that Henry VIII had Anne Boleyn beheaded when she was doing a research project on Elizabeth I. So I was concerned about her seeing this. But we actually talked about it and why that's wrong and how horrible that was. So I hope that she didn't leave that feeling upset and confused the way I did. And, you know, other than that upsetting trigger warning scene, it really is just such a perfect movie. And I really enjoyed rewatching with them. And I named my dog Marty after Marty McFly, so it's, you know, an important movie in my life.
In mine as well, I have a Back to the Future poster in our powder room.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite movies of all time. I got to sit in a DeLorean that my uncle's dad had, and I remember asking where the flux capacitor was when I was little. Yeah, that's a great one for sure.
Okay. If you like this, you should read or listen to The Exorcist, the novel, for possession. Another possession story that Liz Sower recommends is Come Closer by Sarah Gran. If you're looking for haunted New England movie vibes, I recommend The Conjuring. If you're looking for another podcast that kind of has a mix of ghost stories and humor, Scared to Death is fantastic. And some novels, Jennifer McMahon's The Invited and The Winter People, cozy horror. Also, Simone St. James, The Sundown Motel and The Broken Girls. These are just books that have that kind of similar vibe, cozy horror, dark secrets, ghostly mysteries, without being super violent or explicit.
Yeah, I only have 2 ads. One is the movie The Ice Storm, which is a New England drama that takes a behind-the-scenes look at some of these wealthy lives. Some of the conversations we were having made me think of it. And then also Radio Rental, which maybe we'll cover at some point, I think is a great personal story podcast.
Absolutely. Love Radio Rental.
Yeah.
And let's not forget Tom Hanks' The Burbs. Goes to the
Mm.
Burbs. The Burbs. Great movie.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what our homework assignment is?
Okay, so speaking of New England horrors and this area in general and people telling their stories, I wanted us to review Spotlight, the movie. So that'll be next week about the Boston News exclusive.
Okay. Thank you for listening. Please do all the things podcasters ask you to do. Tell a friend, write a review on iTunes. You can email us at drawntodarknesspod@gmail.com. And if, like Shirley Jackson, you delight in what you fear, join us in 2 weeks here at Drawn to Darkness.
Special thanks to Nancy Azzano for our cover art. You can find her on Facebook at Nancy Azzano Art, and Harry Kidd for our intro and outro music. You can find him on Spotify.